Hey there and welcome to another PSD Tuts spoon-fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele and today I'm going to be taking you through James Davies' creating a space-helmeted future retro illustration. So let's check out the final image, and it's pretty cool. It's a throwback to an old school posters. We've got some great texture going on here on all the image. We've got some goo coming down from the helmet around the eyes, and just generally a pretty complete little design there. So do check out all the steps over at the site, and check out all of the files that are linked to. Now, the majority of them are free, like the helmet. And let's have a look what else was free. I think we got some sky as well. Yep, we got the sky was free. And there are a couple of images that that are used in the tutorial that you've got to pay for from my stock photo. But don't worry, I found some free alternatives that you can use on your particular tutorial, your image. If you just do a quick search in a stock exchange, you'll find some other nebula images. And I just opened a few of those up over here, just so you can see. And grab a couple of those, stick them on your desktop, and we'll start using them in this tutorial in just a minute. So don't forget to check out all of our other videos over at the website. As usual, you can find the... let's load that back up. There's a sneak peek of what we're going to be creating. So yeah, in the video section, because I'm using my bamboo here, it's not selecting these tabs, which is annoying. Over at psd.tutsplus.com, head over to the video section, check out all the videos, and don't forget to check out the original tutorial on the homepage. Okay, so let's head back over to the tutorial and get started. So make sure you've opened all those files, save them to your desktop, load up Photoshop, and let's have a look at what I created earlier. So here we go. Some goo effects coming down from the helmet, some lens flare, some texturing. I duplicated this side of the helmet. It's actually not in the tutorial. It might be missed out on a couple of steps, but I'll certainly take you through that. And let's just zoom in and have a look at some of these textures. Here we are at 50%, and you can see we've just got a nice texture across the whole image. Our eyes, some nice drop shadow for the goo, all that kind of stuff, and of course you can add your own text in the middle. So let's just zoom out. Okay, that looks pretty good. Well, the first thing you need to do is we can close down the final image there, is load up your helmet like so. And basically all I've done is I've gone around the helmet with the pen tool. Took a little bit of time, but I think I got a pretty good cut. And I found it a little bit difficult at the top, because if I just turn that layer off and this one back on, it's actually really light at the top. So I just duplicated the layer and I played around with the contrast just to make sure I did get all of those top parts and I didn't select any of the white. And then once I turned those paths into a selection, I reselected this layer down the bottom and then just copied it and pasted it onto this layer. And that's how I got my cut. So we're going to go to File, head over to New, and we're going to create a new document. We're going to set it to millimeters, and we're going to set it so that it's 154.5 by, let's set that to 216. Make sure you're on 300 for your DPI and click on OK. So here we've got our image. I'm just going to bring it into view. Let's bring that down a bit and just zoom out so we can see the whole canvas for now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this layer from here, press V on the keyboard, and I'm just going to drag it straight into our composition, if it'll let me. Right, I'm not sure why that won't let me, so I'm just going to copy it. Okay, if I just go back up and close that down, we're going to start that just again. I've left it in bitmap mode, which we need for later on in the tutorial. So just make sure that when you're in here, you're in RGB. Click on OK. Then I should be able to just drag that straight in like so, and I can, that's great. And then just position it somewhere roughly down in the middle, and then I can just minimize that or close it down. So once you've got your helmet onto the canvas that you're going to be using, the next step is we're going to desaturate it. So I'm going to hit Command Shift and U on the Mac, or Control Shift U, just to desaturate our helmet. And I'm going to head over to the burn tool, and let me just select the burn tool. Where have you gone? Oh no, that was right. That's right. Onto the burn tool. Make sure you've got highlights selected. Set the exposure down to about 10%. And big brush, probably not 900, but it doesn't really matter. And we're just going to basically cover the left of the helmet, basically this layer across here. So we're just going to just give this a little bit more shadow and going down the left. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, then we're going to get started right on the eyes. So let's just name this layer. Grab a new layer, head over to the pen tool, press P on your keyboard. Make sure you've got the first selection set for your pen tools. Make sure you're working in shape layers, and we're going to start drawing out the right eye or the left eye. Doesn't matter which one you do first. In fact, let's not use the pen tool. Let's use the ellipse tool. And again, still make sure you've got the shape layers. And somewhere around here, hold down Shift, click and drag, hold down Alt, and get a nice perfect circle to the size that you want. I'm just going to change the color of that from black to white and click on OK. Okay, so we should have a perfectly circled eye there. We're going to call that eyeball. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply some layer styles to this. So load up your layer styles palette. First we're going to add an inner shadow. So we can just click on inner shadow, make sure it's set to multiply. And we're just going to change this color to 3E, 6F, 79. We're going to make sure it's set to 54. We're not going to use global light, and we're going to set that to -51. We can have a distance of, let's say, 18. Choke we're going to leave on 0 and 45 for the size. Yep, that's pretty good. Let me just double check these. 54, yep, that's good. -51. 18, 0, 45, and we're going to leave the contour as it is. We're then going to head over to gradient overlay. Make sure that's set to normal. 65 for our opacity, and then the gradient. Click inside here, and we're going to select 8 AA BB3. Click on OK and OK. And again, we don't want it to reverse, linear, nope, change that to radial. 90 degrees is fine, and 100% looks pretty good. Let's have a look at how that looks. Okay, we just need to reverse. We want it to be slightly blued on the outside rather than the middle of this radial gradient. So just click on reverse, and we basically get the eyeball forming from the outside in this nice white area in the middle. Okay, that's all we need to do for our eyeball, so click on OK. We're going to draw another circle now. We're going to draw the iris. So new layer, back over to the ellipse tool, and somewhere in the middle hold down Shift, and we're just going to draw out a slightly bigger shape, and we can move that in position, press V or something like that, and we're going to make this a green color, something like 4. Let's go with BB43D. So we're going to start with a nice green color, and again we're going to come back in and we're going to play around with this. So inner shadow this time, make sure it's on multiply. Make sure the color is set to, let's go 1E 6718. Oh, okay. Opacity we can set to 100%. Angle we're going to use global lighting, and we're going to set that to 120. 0 for the distance. 0 for the choke. And we're going to decrease that size down to 32. And then we're going to go inner glow. down here. Make sure this is set to multiply, and your opacity is set to 38, 0 for the noise, and then we're going to select the color again, the greeny color. This time we're going 195415. Click on OK. Soft is fine, edge is fine, 0 for the choke, and this time the size is going to be 10. Okay, and finally we're going to add, let's turn off this gradient overlay. We're going to turn on bevel and emboss, and we're going to set that to inner bevel, smooth, hike that right up to 451. Make sure it's going up, and the size again 198, nice and big. Soften set to 0, angle is set to 120, 30 degrees for the altitude is fine. And this time we're going to change the contour to cone. Second one along. Screen, we're going to change the color to 8A, F8, 7C. Click on OK. And then multiply, we're going to set that to black, and we're going to reduce that right down to 0. And let's have a look at how we're getting on with that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to click on OK. Just going to bring in my canvas. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then finally, we're going to add our pupil. So again, new layer. Call it pupil. Grab our ellipse tool. And again, somewhere close to the middle. Nice and black. Make sure that's set to black. And then this time what we're going to do is come back in, turn all of these off. Going to give it an outer glow, set it to screen, 75, 0 for noise, and then we're going to change this color here to 77 DF 6C. Yep. Make sure it's set to softer with a spread of 7, and we're going to change the size down to 28 or up to 28. Contour looks pretty good. Set it to 50 and 0, and let's click on OK. And it's not quite in the middle, so I'm just going to hit V on the keyboard, and I'm just going to move that into place. That looks about right there. Brilliant. Okay, so our eye is starting to take shape. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little reflection up here, a little white circle. And to do that, we just create a new layer, another ellipse tool. This time we set it to white, and we're going to draw a really small white circle. I'm just going to zoom in just so I can see the eye. And we're going to draw this about here. Okay. Just going to move that into place. I'm going to take off our outer glow, click on OK. Just make sure they're all turned off. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom straight out and have a look at how that looks. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so we can stick all of that into a group now. We can just duplicate that for our other eye. So I'm going to select all of these, stick them into a group. It's his left eye, so I'm going to call it left eye. Then I'm going to duplicate that group, and we'll call it right eye. V on the keyboard, hold down Shift, and we're just going to move it over to the left. And that looks pretty good. Just going to move it a little bit to the left. I'm actually going to move his left one over as well. And pretty happy with that. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, so once you've duplicated it, you can move on to the next step. We're going to use the selection tool now, and this part isn't in the actual written tutorial, and I'm just going to play around with this area down on the left. So Z on the keyboard, just to zoom into this area that we're looking at here. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to grab our lasso tool, and I'm just going to grab this top area here, and then come straight up there, like so. I'm going to Command C on this layer, and then Command J, and that's going to copy that straight to that layer. V on the keyboard, and I can start to move that little bit around. So I'm going to move that over here to the right, turn off auto select for now. Command transform, right click on that layer, flip it horizontally, and we're going to start to play around with it so that it lines up like so with the area on the left. Again, just going to zoom in. And then we're just going to play around until we get something that looks pretty smooth. Let's see if that's parallel. Just going to bring the guide down to the bottom of the buckle. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so now we're just going to do some blending. We're just going to get rid of this area here. So a number of ways we can do this. I'm just going to quickly do it on with the clone tool, because all the effects that we're going to apply later on, it's not really going to matter too much. So I'm going to alt click there and there and just keep selecting different source. And just brushing away that little line. Like so. And then let's move down, have a look how the join is down here. Okay, it's not perfect, so if I just grab the eraser tool, then we just take some of this out. Let's increase the opacity right up and the flow. Okay, take out this area here, and again I'm going to go back in with my clone tool, and we're just going to clone out this area here. Okay, that looks pretty good, and I'm just going to grab another little bit. I'm going to grab just like an area like that. I'm going to copy that, stick that on a new layer, bring that over, and again just going to start to play around with that, trying to get this join. Okay, and again I'm going to grab the eraser tool, maybe just increase the hardness. Okay, and again back to our clone tool, just going to zoom in that little bit. Okay. Doesn't look too bad. And then let's zoom out and just have a quick look. Okay, it's not perfect, but it doesn't matter too much. Let's just select this layer here. Again, back to the clone. This layer, this part is a little bit fidgety. There we go. That's looking good. Okay, so I'm happy with that now. Just going to zoom out and take a look. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so once you've duplicated that area over there, it is a little bit fidgety, and you swapped it over. That's basically that's all we're going to do with the helmet, really, and then we're just going to play around with some effects. So the next thing we need to start to do is above the eye, create a new layer. Head over to the pen tool, and we're going to select again. Make sure you've got your shape layers selected, and to start with, I'm just going to choose any grey colour, and we're going to start building in this goo. Now we want the goo to look like it's coming from underneath our visor here. So press P on the keyboard, and with your pen tool we're going to start to draw out the goo coming down from the helmet. So I'm just selecting right from the helmet area there. In fact, we can go just a little bit out because we're going to mask over this anyway. And we're going to think about how the goo is going to come down. So I'm going to start like so and just click and drag. And Control Z that. I do not want any of these on for now. So again, oh, let's just turn that off. Okay, so we're going to start above the helmet. We're going to come back and just play around with the visor, and we're going to mask it out basically. So I'm going to have this coming down to about here, then over here. Let's hold down Alt, click on there. Have it drip right down the eye. Another little drip. And obviously play around with your drips to get them exactly how you want them. But I'm pretty happy with this. Okay, and then I'm going to do a couple more just below the eyes. In fact, I don't want that not to cover the eye there, so I'm just going to hit the V tool. I'm just going to move that over and down, just nudge it down just a bit. Make sure it's still over the visor. Yep, that looks pretty good. So like I said, we're going to add a few more little goo layers behind the eyes. So come back down underneath the eyes section, click on new layer, click on the pen tool again, and this time we're going to have a bit coming down from behind this eye here. So I'm just going to grab here. Then create a new layer, and then going to have one coming down here. Okay, and that part doesn't really matter because it's going to be behind the eye anyway. And that should do that part. And then we're going to add a little bit of a beard. So head down to the bottom down here. And again, underneath all of these layers, create a new layer. And then we're going to create the beard as if it's dripping down. So we're going to start up here. And then we're going to make it come down, around. I'm going to move that point up, press A on the keyboard. Back to the pen tool. So it's just going to loop round, and then it's going to come down. It's not wide enough. There we go. And then back around this last little bit, up the side of the buckle. And then in like so. Okay, so that's all of our goo done. Again, take your time with the goo. Make it look exactly how you want it to look. I'm just going to just close all of those. So we get a bit of space. You can add more, you know, above the eyes, below the eyes, or whatever it is that you want to do. Just going to hit the V tool and just deselect that. Okay, that looks pretty good. So once you've done the goo, we're going to play around with our helmet layer and we're going to duplicate it, and then we're going to apply some effects to our goo using, using the layer styles. So to just mask off this area down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my helmet layer by hitting Command J. Drag that all the way up to be the top layer, and then zoom out just a little bit. Grab the pen tool, and we're just going to create the area for our layer mask. Okay. I'm just going to make that a selection actually. Okay, make that a selection. I'm going to come back onto our helmet layer, and then with that selection I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Mask, and reveal that selection. Okay, let's just bin that a second. Okay, so now that you can see, that's actually cut off those areas that we had set up before, so the goo is going to look like it's coming from beneath the visor itself. And if I just grab this goo layer here, if I move it up, okay, you can see that it's all taken into account by that layer mask we did for our helmet layer copy. Okay, so once you're happy with all of your goo, we can start to apply our layer styles. So head over to the first bit of goo. We're going to do it once. We're going to copy and paste it over to the other layers, but you're going to start by just double clicking on the layer style like so, and we're going to start with inner shadow, and again make sure that's set to multiply, and the first color that we're going to use, in fact before we do that, let's make all of these black first. We had them on grey just so we could see them as we were drawing them out, otherwise it would have disappeared into the back of the helmet. So just quickly do that. There we go. Back to our first layer. We're going to add an inner shadow, make sure it's set to multiply, and then we're going to change that color to 5.7, 5.6, and 5B. Click on OK. We're going to have that set to be 71 for opacity. Our angle, we're not going to use global light. We're going to set that to -122. We're going to set our distance to be 22, 0 for the choke, and size is going to be 68. Oh. And we're going to set this so that it's set to the second row half rounded, and that's all fine. I'm then going to move on to inner glow. Make sure your inner glow is set to screen. (77), 0 for the noise, and then the color is going to be lighter color, so we're going to select C7, C7, C7. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Softer edge 0, and then 21 for the size, and everything else looks fine. Head over to bevel and emboss on the left hand side. Make sure it's inner bevel, smooth. We're going to set it to 41. Make sure it's going up. Then 81 for size, 16 for our soften, and then we're going to change that to be 39 and 21 for altitude. Okay, we're going to change our contour to this one here, second from the end. It's Cove, and we're going to change that color to 9E, 9EA, 9EA 0. Click on OK. Make sure that's set to screen. 53, and then we're just going to set a purple for this last color, leave it on multiply. In the tutorial it's set to something like 5F00 5D, but we're going to leave that opacity right down at 0. Okay, last thing is a bit of satin, so click on satin. We're going to set that to multiply black. We're going to increase it to 100%. Change the angle to 19, 12 for the distance, and 46 for the size. Again, select Cove, and this time make sure both boxes are ticked. And that's the kind of effect that we're getting. So if you click preview, you're going to see that as it forms. That looks pretty good. I'm going to click on OK. And we're going to move on to each of the other layers. So if we copy that, right click on the layer, go to copy layer style. I'm just going to right click on each of the goo layers and just paste that layer style. That just really helps speed up the process. Like so. Don't worry too much about these hard lines for now or anything like that. We're going to come back and fix all of that. So for each of these layers now, these goo layers, we're going to create another new layer and we're going to stick it underneath. We're going to hit Shift, select the two layers, Command or Control E, and we're just going to merge them together, and that's going to rasterize those layers for us. So again, then select those two and merge those layers. Excuse me, there's my phone going off. Okay, so we're going to merge those layers. That's just that little teardrop, and new layer, bring that underneath, shift the two of them, merge them together, and don't forget to do it with the one that's above the eyes, and merge those layers together. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to start to create an action now, which is going to add our aged look to the poster. And to do that, you need to make sure that you've got the actions panel open up. If you haven't, head over to Window, and you can see you've got actions there. Make sure that's checked, and you should have the options somewhere on your screen. I've just grabbed my little bar and put it into this little layout that I've set up for recording these screencasts. A couple of things I just want to point out just before we move on. We need to make sure we merge these eye layers down. So I'm just going to hit Command E, and we also need to desaturate them. So Command Shift and U, and then the same with the left eye, just so they all fall into shape. That looks pretty good. A couple of things I want to notice. I kind of rushed the visor here, so you've got a few little black lines just poking through, and I don't think my beard layer, if I just grab that, if I move that down, it's not going to look any good but I should have covered up these areas down at the bottom here, but I was just trying to make sure I got the goo layers done. So make sure you take that into account with all the stuff that you're doing, and we can start to apply these actions. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to come up here, and I've already created one called New Age Print, and I'm just going to stick that into the bin, and I'm going to stick Age Print into the bin. And we're going to create a new one, and we're going to call it Age Print. Give it an action or a function key if you want. Give it a color, something like that. But I'm just going to click record so we can get started. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to add some noise. So head over to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. 6.8% is good enough. Gaussian and monochromatic, and click on OK. Then we're going to go Filter and Gaussian Blur, and have that set to 1.1. And then finally we're going to go to Filter, Sharpen, and Smart Sharpen. Have that set on Basic, Default, 186 by a radius of 7.4 pixels, Gaussian Blur, everything else looks pretty good. And click on OK, and then stop recording. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go through each of our other layers, and you can press your function key or you can just press play, like so. And you know, actions are really great for doing those things that you don't want to really have to do for every single layer over and over again. Just do it once and then apply it to everything else. Let's make sure I've got this applied to my helmet layer. Okay, and I also need to make sure I've got it applied to those little areas that I did over here. So that's this one and this one. Brilliant, starting to look pretty good. So we've got our texture forming. Okay, and the next thing we need to move on is we're going to add a layer, and we're going to add a layer star to all of the layers inside the helmet, a little drop shadow. So everything except for the visor, the helmet, and the beard. So that basically means our top shadow up here. I'm just going to quickly add a drop shadow, and we're going to set that to multiply black 60%, 42, and 11, 0, and 9 for the size. Everything else is pretty good. And click on OK. And you can see it's just applied that little drop shadow over the eyes. Now I'm going to copy that layer style. Right click on the layer, go to copy layer style. I'm going to paste it onto one of the eyes. Paste it onto his left eye. There we go. And a little bit of goo just down here. And in between the eyes. And then again, just like we did before, to rasterize these layers, I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to stick it below it, and then just merge the two together. New layer, and merge, new layer, merge, new layer. Select the other one, merge it, and last time. Okay, so we've rasterized all those layers, and we've got a nice little shadow now of the goo sitting over the eyeballs, and the eyeballs being on top of the goo behind it, and so on. So this layer here, let me just select this layer. It didn't get our aged effect. There we go, that's much better. But it does have a drop shadow onto the layer below. Okay, so that's pretty good. So we're going to select our beard layer now, and we're going to add a layer mask, and we're trying to get some blend between the background here and this area down here. So if we select our beard layer, which is my shape 6, I'm going to go to layer, layer mask, and reveal all. There we go. And then with the eraser tool, we're going to set the background to be black, a soft edge, And let's reduce the opacity right down to about 30%. We're just going to chip away. Ooh. Yeah, 30% is fine. Okay, so I'm going to increase the size of the brush, and we're just going to chip away at this hard area down here. So you see, if I just use the edge of that circle just to get rid of that, like so, we just keep working on it. Again, play around with the flow maybe. And slowly but surely, it's going to just start to fade off. Like so. And don't worry too much about any of the little added little things that come through from the bottom layers or anything. It all adds to the texture of it, and I think that's starting to look pretty good. Okay, so once you've erased all of that, next thing you can do is play around with some of the levels on that layer. So if we go to, make sure you've got the layer selected, not the layer mask, head up to Image, Adjustments and Levels, and maybe let's increase that to 12, just darken it a little bit, 0.66. That might be a little bit too much. 0.75. Yeah, I'm happy about 0.77 and 255, and just click on OK. And that kind of it's nice and dark and it follows through, which is pretty cool. Alright, next thing we need to do is we're going to open up a cloud layer and start playing around with our background layers. So here's the cloud layer right here. I'm just going to press V on the keyboard, drag it straight onto my document, and I'm going to bring it just below our helmet layer. Transform it, resize it, let's just zoom out so we can see the whole canvas. Okay, looks pretty good. And then hit enter. Once you've resized it, Command Shift U to desaturate it, and we're going to go back over to our Age Print action, click on play. Let's have a look at our little texture there. Okay, so the clouds have been texturized now. We're going to create a new layer at the very top, and we're going to fill it in with black. Filter, render, and we're going to go to lens flare. Let's have lens flare set to 105 millimeter prime. Yeah, let's go with that. I'm just going to move that up a little bit. Click on OK. And then we're going to run our aged print on that, and we're going to do that twice, and then we're going to set that layer to screen like so. So you can just see it over here. You might want to move it up, you might want to move it down, so wherever the light's coming off the visor, but that looks okay to me. If I hit V on the keyboard and we just move it up just a little bit, we do get a little edge over here, but again, if you grab that eraser tool and just softly stroke away, whoop, let's get rid of that guide. So if you just softly stroke away at that edge, it's going to get rid of that for you, and maybe have it so that's coming off top of the helmet. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good, and I've erased those lines already. So make sure to apply the age print twice to that and set it to screen. We're also going to play around with the levels, so image, adjustments and levels, and set these to 29. 1 and 255. Click on OK. We're going to duplicate that layer, so Command J or Control J on the keyboard. We're going to go to Filter, Blur, and Motion Blur. Set that to 48 degrees and 999 for the distance. Go back up to Filter, to Sharpen, and Smart Sharpen. This time set it to 500% and 25 pixels. And click on OK. And we're just creating this little, if I move that around, you can see this little line here coming down like so, right down the face. And again, this adds to the overall structure of the image, where the direction the light's coming from, how it's hitting the helmet, and so on. Okay, so moving on to the last little bit now, we're going to create a new layer below our face layer. So inside here, and we're going to grab a big white brush. Okay, it looks pretty good. Let's reduce the size down to 820 pixels. The opacity down to 15. And normal mode, and make sure hardness is set to 0, which it is. And we're just going to create some glowing areas behind, down here. Maybe come down the helmet a little bit, and then just over here, and so on, just to light those areas up from the lens flare, as if it's kind of a glow coming from the light reflecting off the shine of the helmet. Right, we're going to create a gradient map now. So back up to the top, we're going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and Gradient Map. Click on OK. And we're going to, that looks really weird, we're going to set this to, the first color is going to be set to 18374B, going right across to BE DEC4. Nice light green. Click on OK and OK, and that looks a lot better. And click on OK. And duplicate that layer, so Command J again. We're going to position the duplicate below the original. We're going to set it to screen and an opacity of 70%. Okay, and with the top layer, we're going to set it to color. Okay. We're going to open up the scanner image now. Now, in the tutorial, it takes you through some steps about, opening up your scanner, taking a shot with the scanner with the door open on it, with the lid open on it, and bringing that into Photoshop. I've got a scanned image in here already, which is white, and you can see it's just got this darkened area along the top. All we did to make it pink was play around with the image adjustments, and we're going to go to levels, and we're going to set the levels to be 241, 1 and 255, and we get this kind of pink glow here around the blue and the dark edges. Click on OK, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy that straight onto our other layer like so, resize it, so Command T, maybe scale it to about 50. How does that look? Okay, still a bit big, so reduce that down to 10, and I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. And just drag that into place like so, and then hit enter. Set that to multiply, duplicate it, so Command J, set the duplicate to color, and make sure the opacity on that layer is down to 40. Okay, and then we're going to go to new layer, down above our cloud layer, and we're going to burn in some layers. Now there's one thing that I haven't brought in, which is if I just zoom back into our image, was our star layers, and that they're going to go underneath our mask layer and above our sky layer. So here's the nebula, or the image of the stars that I've chosen to work with. It's one of the free ones. Just going to press V, and I'm going to drag it straight onto our canvas here. So drag that straight on. There we go. And I'm just going to reduce it in size. Again, zoom out so I can see the whole canvas. It's a little bit big. Okay, and then zoom back in. And I'm going to desaturate that layer, Command Shift U. And I'm going to apply texturized age print to that layer as well. And then above that layer, just create a new layer, and we're going to fill this layer with white. Our Photoshop steals up my memory. Okay, so we're going to fill that layer with white, and then using the burn tool, about 900 pixels, nice soft brush, set the exposure down to about 25, and we're just going to slowly burn this top, down the sides, and come along the bottom. And I'm just going to create a little layer mask as well, just bring back some of those stars. Okay, looks pretty good. Just going to double check these, the scanned area here. Make sure your first one was set to multiply. That's right. And the second one was set to color. 40%. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so finally we're going to head over to mode, image mode. We're going to hit grayscale. It's going to give us a little warning. We're going to hit flatten. We're going to discard. And hopefully Photoshop should stick all of that into a nice grey image for us, like so. Then we're going to go to image, mode, and bitmap. And then make sure you have the following settings for your bitmap. So we're going to have it set to 300 pixels, half tones, that's all good. Click on OK. And then we're going to have it set frequency to 45, angle to 45, and round, and click on OK. Now, Command A, Command C, copy everything, and then in our histories panel, we're going to come back to just before where we did that. Going to come up here, going to create a new layer, and we're going to paste that, and then we're going to set that pasted layer to multiply, and then we're going to reduce it down to about 20%, like so. And if we just zoom in, we can see that all that texture has been applied, and it looks pretty good. And that is the tutorial. I mean, if you want to take some time to add in some text down at the bottom down here, or take a bit more time with your goo, that's basically the tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed that. Do head over to the website and check out James Davis's Creating a Space Helmeted Future Retro Illustration. I've been Gavin Steele, taking you through this PSD Tuts screencast for Monday, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much. Bye.